You could open the doors.
And you're ready to roll.
Great.
I'm sorry.
Good morning. My name is Ed Hamrick. I'm Assistant Attorney General and I represent the State Board of Land Commissioners. Today is Thursday, December 11th, and the board has been in executive session this morning to discuss a property matter authorized under 24-6402 3A1 of the Colorado Revised Statutes, specifically a potential acquisition of property in Clear Creek County. This was noticed for executive session, and no decisions were made by the board in executive session. The board is now back in its open session and ready to proceed with its order of business. Thank you very much.
Ed. All right, now we'll open the balance of the meeting, and here's a time where we like to hear from the public. Should there be any comments about non-agenda items? And for the record, we did not have any public comments submitted electronically prior to this meeting.
So folks listening along online, if you'd like to raise a comment to this commission on items that are not part of our published agenda today, now's the time to do that. Use the raise hand button on your Zoom viewer and we'll bring you forward so you can address the commission. No hands are raised, Commissioner.
Thank you. Director Rosmarino, over to you for announcements.
I have two announcements. One is that we are removing Bergen Peak from the final action item agenda. My second is we are very pleased to celebrate a much deserved promotion. Matt LaFontaine is now our real estate program manager.
And now over to Tim Brass for the natural resources update.
All right, thank you, Chair Probe. I'm glad to be here on behalf of DNR to provide a couple of quick updates. To start, I wanted to provide a couple of staffing updates. Folks likely saw that last week Jeff Davis stepped down as Colorado Parks and Wildlife Director and has now moved over to serve in the DNR's Executive Director's office, where he's going to be serving as a Senior Policy Advisor for strategic priorities. Major General Laura Clellan, retired general and former Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Military and Veteran Affairs, has been named as the acting director, and the formal search for a director of CPW will begin here soon. DNR also hired Jennifer Walker Graff as our new Assistant Director for Energy Innovation. Jennifer comes to DNR with extensive energy experience, including most recently at the U.S. Department of Energy. We're excited to have Jennifer on the DNR team and anticipate that she'll be working closely with the State Land Board staff on energy-related issues. Moving on to budget, on December 2nd, the State Land Board budget was presented to the Joint Budget Committee by Joint Budget Committee staff. DNR's budget hearing is scheduled for January 8th, where DNR and State Land Board staff will respond to the Joint Budget Committee's questions, and will also highlight the division's budget and initiatives. As a quick reminder, the State Land Board's budget included two requests, 4 new staff to enhance energy lease compliance and oversight, and 1 new staff member to support tribal consultation and engagement. Moving on to federal updates, the Cimarron and Comanche National Grasslands Management Plan is ongoing, and currently the Forest Service is evaluating comments that were submitted back in September on their draft assessment documents. DNR is also evaluating recently proposed rule changes regarding the Endangered Species Act, as well as the definition of the waters of the United States. Moving on to energy updates, the ECMC Commission met yesterday for commissioner deliberations on the Sunlight Long Oil and Gas Development Plan, and The commission decided to request additional information on alternative locations, and so we expect it to take a few months here before a final decision is made there. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory and School of Mines hosted a geothermal solutions symposium on December 2nd, where they highlighted rapid advancements in drilling, subsurface imaging, and project design that are improving certainty around site selection and next generation geothermal. Presenters emphasized the American West's exceptional geologic potential, recent prioritization at the federal level, and regional importance of expanding access to suitable public lands for demonstration projects. Overall, the event reinforced strong alignment between state land opportunities and Colorado's emerging geothermal landscape. DNR is currently meeting with stakeholders to discuss our legislative proposal for the state to pursue primacy to regulate all classes of underground injection wells. As a reminder, ECMC currently regulates Class 2 wells and has applied for primacy for Class 6 wells. Classes 1, 3, 4, and 5 are currently regulated by the US EPA. Quick water update. On November 19th, the Colorado Water Conservation Board voted to approve the long-anticipated Shoshone water rights acquisition to secure 2 water rights associated with the Shoshone Power Plant, including one of the state's most significant Colorado River water rights for permanent in-stream flow protection. That vote launches the next phase of the process, including water court, and begins the work of preserving and improving a 2.4-mile stretch of Colorado River between the power plant and the discharge outlets. Quick forest update. The aerial forest health survey flights this year highlighted a expansive mountain pine beetle outbreak along the Front Range in the I-70 and 285 corridors. The DNR, State Forest Service, and the Department of Fire and Prevention and Control are currently working together with the governor's office on next steps to support short, medium, and long-term solutions. The COSWAP team will have funding decisions made on their 4th round of the workforce development grants by the end of the calendar year. The team appreciates the coordination with the Youth Corps and the Department of Corrections SWIFT crews for the projects that were applied for. Moving on to CPW, on November 18th, Colorado Parks and Wildlife released the draft beaver conservation and management strategy for public comment. Changes based on this public feedback will be incorporated into the final plan, which CPW anticipates bringing forward to the commission in February. CPW will be also hosting its annual Partners in the Outdoors Conference, April 27th through the 29th in Colorado Springs, and we'd encourage those of you who are interested in attending to register early through CPW's website. That concludes my updates, and happy to answer any questions folks may have.
Yeah. Questions, commissioners?
Tim, what were the suggestions to deal with pine beetles, or have they come up yet? It just seems like a problem that's almost insurmountable in this state, and I'm curious if there's anything new.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't been super in the loop on the specifics around those conversations to date, but I know those conversations are ongoing and I can get back to you with more details on specifics if you want. Yeah.
I'd be interested too if there's any new approaches or experimental things they're thinking about.
Yeah.
They were doing pheromone packets, which I've tried myself and not much luck. It's supposed to fool the beetles about their mating season or something. They look kind of like tea bags, and you tack them up to a tree, and it might fool like 10 beetles out of 10 billion or something, but not very effective yet.
You're not going to invest in that as a startup technology.
I don't think so. Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely get some more information and share that with the Everyone.
So Tim.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And the beaver plan, where is that? Is that on the website now?
It is, yeah. So if you go to the public engagement section of CPW's website, there's a comment portal with the draft posted there. And they're, yeah, again, kind of working on incorporating some of that feedback. And then I think they're shooting for a February meeting to do a presentation on the plan to the CPW Commission.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Now for the business section, I'll note that unless something's changed, we have no request for review. And we'll proceed with final action items for the agenda.
Good morning, commissioners. Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
Good morning.
While Nick's doing all of his things, I guess I'll just start for the record. Justin Beery, Water Program Manager. Today, I'm seeking your approval for a new ground lease in Swatch County, which of course is a final action item, as you noted. The cover sheet that was included in your board packet is on tab 2. I'm going to provide a brief background and a description of the proposed lease and explain staff's recommendation formulation, and of course, here to address your questions and comments, as well as comments from the public. The photo on the screen is of the piece of property and the creek that we're going to be discussing. This is the Swatch Creek State Trust Land parcel, and it's Swatch Creek itself. Jerry Shawcroft and I were on the property a couple months ago and took this photo. So. Okay, at the conclusion of our discussion and public comment, I hope you vote in favor to enter into this new lease, which will double this particular parcel's annual revenue by leveraging some existing ditch diversion and operation encumbrances. One of the encumbrances you can actually see in the very center of the photo here. This head gate is, we'll call it an encumbrance. So with that, we'll dive into it. So the proposed lease is located on State Trust Land parcel on the north end of the San Luis Valley, just southeast of the town of Swatch. And since I'm the water guy, we have to talk about water and hydrology. So this is located in Water Division number 3. So that's the Rio Grande Basin. Of course, it's in our Southwest, the Land Board Southwest District that Jerry Shawcroft manages. The proposed lease is with the Rio Grande Water Conservation District, and it would allow the district and its sub-districts to construct an augmentation well, which when pumped would contribute water to the creek itself. And we'll talk about what an augmentation well here is in a minute. Hydrologically speaking, the Swatch Creek is often dry. But when it does flow, it will occasionally flow into San Luis Creek, and then San Luis Creek flows into the San Luis Lakes, and that's where it stops. It's in the closed basin project. So it's a little bit odd because it's in the Rio Grande Basin, but it doesn't directly contribute to the Rio Grande River. So the map, which you're seeing, the highlighted creek is Swatch Creek, and the red star is the property location. Okay, so let's talk through this map a little bit. So the creek is running through the center of the parcel. It flows from left to right or west to east. The yellow dots are existing ditch diversions off of the creek. The orange star, of course, is the proposed lease location. And then you'll see a black dotted line running north and south-ish. That's a road access. And then there's also power along the west boundary of the property. So you'll note that there are 6 diversions on the creek. And these diversions are the reason that the district is interested in our particular property here. The district needs to make water replacements upstream of these diversions. And so that, of course, makes this property the correct and necessary location for an augmentation well. More specifically, the proposed well would deliver water upstream of the Harn Ditch, which is the starred location on the map there. So it's the most senior. It has an appropriation date of 1870. Without these diversions existing on this particular parcel, it wouldn't be suitable for this sort of lease. And I'd like to note that these existing ditches and diversions, we don't receive any revenue from those. Those have existed since the 1800s. They're not, some of them have papered right-of-ways, some of them are implied right-of-ways, but we don't get any revenue from these ditches. Okay, so this is an augmentation well is what they're pursuing. So what is an augmentation well? Augmentation wells, or I call them aug wells, pump groundwater to a surface stream as a part of an augmentation plan to protect senior water rights. The augmentation well provides water immediately to the stream when needed. The augmentation well's own depletions, groundwater depletions, also have to be paid back over time. And I liken augmentation wells to credit cards. You pull the water out now, we need it now, pay depletions that were occurring now, and then depletions that are then created, you pay back over time. So it's pay now, settle the bill later. So this photo is from the conservation district. This is one of their existing aug wells on Swatch Creek. That we're looking at the end of the pipe, putting water into a constructed riprap rock area that then flows into the creek, and the rock is to prevent erosion. And so if we were to enter in this lease, they would construct something like this on our property that would flow into the creek as well. Continuing on, this on the right-hand side of the photo is the actual well itself. So this is again an existing augmentation well on another property along Swatch Creek. The trailer that you see, the white trailer, is just a generator. It's a power pack that wouldn't be on our property because we have power on our property. So really it's the encumbrance or the footprint of this whole thing is pretty minimal. So I mentioned aug plans use aug wells. So the Rio Grande Water Conservation District is the augmentor. They have the augmentation plan. And so they replace groundwater depletions to the creek when the creek is flowing. The district intends to use confined aquifer groundwater rights through their augmentation wells. So it's going to be a series of augmentation wells, but they only need one on our particular property to meet their replacement obligations. And we can talk about the confined aquifer and the groundwater and the rights, but we don't need to because we're pursuing a ground lease. Okay, we're recommending a ground lease structure because the land board doesn't own the water rights, these particular water rights, and we don't seek to own these water rights. They have complexities, regulatory, legal, and depletion, groundwater depletion obligations. So in terms of water right, it's more of a liability to own it unless you're an augmenter. So with a ground lease, the district can meet their augmentation responsibilities while we're able to protect the trust from long-term liability tied to the groundwater right and its operations. I want to note and be perfectly clear that this isn't a water lease. It's a ground lease for a water structure. Lease term. So the lease term that's proposed is 30 years with a 30-year renewal option. And that's a long term. And it's often needed for water providers because they need a long runway to be able to plan for operations. And a lot of their depletions that they owe also go out a long time. And it's this term, this 30-year term, is really the reason that this lease requires board action. If it was a shorter term, policy would allow staff to approve it. So that's why it's in front of you today. The current revenue for this parcel is just about $2,200 a year through a single grazing lease. And as I noted earlier, that the land is already encumbered by several 6 ditch access and diversion easements. And these easements generate no revenue, but this well would then leverage these existing encumbrances to get us $2,500 a year. So the district has offered $2,500 a year, adjusted for inflation every 5 years. I talked with David Rodenberg because we thought maybe a right of way would be appropriate, but right of way pricing was a lot less than $2,500. So felt like we were getting a good deal by doing $2,500 a year for 30 years. And again, as I noted earlier, that the $2,500 a year would double the revenue that this parcel is generating. And really, this is it's a minimal trade-off. So only a small portion of this parcel is needed for construction. We'll say maybe an acre, maybe half an acre. After it's all reclaimed and done, the footprint of the well, as you saw in the photo, is quite small. And the existing grazing operation, the existing lease, really won't have any disruption. So the trust avoids owning the groundwater right, which can be a liability. And so that protects us legally, operationally, and regulatory. The lease isolates responsibility for construction, operation, and depletion obligations to the district. And it also supports basin-wide, especially this specific district, the Swatch Creek district within the Rio Grande Water Conservation District. It supports their operations. And again, it protects the trust from future water litigation. So in summary, this lease generates new reliable revenue for the school trust. It monetizes existing encumbrances. It minimizes our legal and operational risk. It supports regional water administration, maintains compatibility with existing uses, and finally, it's in front of you because of the lease term, the length of the term. So staff recommends that you vote in favor. We don't vote. We recommend that you vote in favor to enter into this lease with the Rio Grande Water Conservation District. And with that, I appreciate your time. It concludes my prepared remarks, and I welcome your questions and comments, as well as comments from the public. And for your reference, the board orders up on the screen.
Questions, commissioners? I actually have one. Is it safe to say that, this is basically just timing differences, right, in the water, but isn't it going to benefit us and nature by the stream being healthier and having more water more consistently?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking of the same thing about those ditches too, of the water that leaves our property, in a sense, is it's not irrigating our property directly, but it does irrigate.
There's some sub irrigation there. And they're pulling then the water when the stream is running naturally. They're pulling the water back and meeting the depletion.
Right, they'll pull it out of the ground and meet that depletion. That's right.
All right, then. Are we ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the lease of Swatch Creek State Trust land to the Rio Grande Water Conservation District and its sub-districts under the terms of the written lease.
I'll second that, and maybe the Swatch Creek augmentation well ground lease.
Is that sufficiently clear that it's pursuant to the board order?
So, yeah, I just want to clarify that as we write the board order, what you're moving is the proposed board order that's on the screen and all. I think that's
a little clearer.
Yeah, I think that's what you don't have to read it. I just want to make sure that when we write the order, that is the motion that you're making.
I'll try again. I make a motion that we approve the proposed board order regarding Swatch Creek up on the screen. Good.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. And a second? Second. Commissioner Heath? Commissioner Pribble, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner, well, okay. So sorry. Never mind, that was a practice round. Nick, shall we see if there's any public comment on this agenda item?
Folks listening along online, if you wanted to make a comment on this item, use the raise hand feature and we'll bring you forward so you can address the board. No hands are raised.
Thank you. Now, let's take a vote on the motion in front of us. Commissioner Pribble? Aye, you're on mute again.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, then. I believe we're gonna view the sand and gravel mining production lease.
There, but I've jumped the gun in the past, so we should. It gets so enthusiastic.
We like it.
All right, good morning, commissioners. This is Ben Teschner, Solid Minerals Manager. For this item, I also believe Lex Nichols is on is joining us virtually. Lex is a man of many talents, but among other things is the director of the Otero County Road and Bridge Department. This is staff is recommending you approve sand and gravel mining lease 117895 with Otero County Road and Bridge. The photo on your screen is of the parcel, looking at approximately where the county would like to put a maximum 25-acre gravel operation. You can see in the distance there are some low brown hills that are actually a commercial gravel operation that is over our property line, but that gravel resource extends into state land board property. There we go. So this lease would earn us approximately $35,000 over the next 10 years, which in the solid minerals world is not a ton of money. However, it does monetize an opportunity or monetize something from this parcel that currently supports a single grazing lease. The reason that we have done these in the past is really because we want to be a good neighbor with our counties who are continually strapped for gravel resources to maintain their roads and do the other necessary work that they do for the counties. So this is not gravel that would enter the commercial market. This is going to be mined by the county and used by the county on their roads and the other infrastructure that they maintain. Oh, I want to make one more. So this photo is taken right at an L bend in a county road, and this is where they would access the property, and you'll see that a little more clearly on the next map, or maybe the one following. This lease is located in central Otero County, just south of the town of Rocky Ford. And if we zoom in on that, Rocky Ford is just north of the area shown on this map. The lease area is ringed in yellow, but as I mentioned before, the disturbance area here would be approximately 25 acres. So this is that L bend I was talking about before. There's a county road that runs right up the east edge of the section, and then takes a right turn right here, and we'd be accessing from that corner, which my mouse is struggling here, and constructing the gravel pit on that sort of right side over there. And you can also see the gravel operation to the north that you could see in that photo earlier. As with all of the solid minerals leases that come before you, staff reach out to our staff, our other business line managers, our stewardship staff, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and seek comment on what impacts this operation may have. And for this one, we learned that there are potentially burrowing owls in this area. And so staff is recommending a stewardship stipulation that limits initial disturbance between March 15th and August 31st. A similar one for mountain plover, April 1 to August 15th. This is also in the Purgatory Prairie habitat area, and so we require that the lessee approve the seed mix that they use for reclamation with our district staff and with our district staff specifically, because they're the ones, and stewardship staff, because they're the ones who know best. And then, as been in our custom recently on these, we are also recommending a Class 3 cultural resources survey. This is an area that has not been surveyed for cultural resources in the past, but we have been recently putting this into solid minerals production leases, having the lessee survey the area, the planned disturbance area. So they would not survey the entire quarter section, only the areas that they plan to disturb. The revenue projections. This lease will have a rent of $800 per year for the quarter section and a royalty rate at $68 per ton. 68 cents, excuse me, thank you. $68 would be quite prohibitive. It would have an advanced minimum royalty of $2,000 per year. And as a reminder for the board, our advanced minimum royalties are an amount they pay in advance, and then they can draw upon that over the course of the year. Should they exceed that amount, they begin paying royalty checks for above and beyond. And so we're looking at a total revenue in year 1 and year 2 when they are seeking permits of right around that rental rate of $800. And then when they begin production, probably around year 3, we're looking at a minimum of $2,800 and some years exceeding that, but probably not by a heck of a lot, given the county's projected gravel needs from this site. So that's what I have for you today. We are recommending that you approve 117,895 with Otero County Road and Bridge on this 160 acres in northern Otero County. And happy to take questions or comments. And as I say, I believe Lex Nichols is on as well. If you have any questions for the county, and here's the board order for your convenience.
Yes, Commissioner.
So, and on those restrictions, like between March and I think the end of August, is that annually that they can't access that property during that time?
It's not that they can't access it. So what we do, and this comes from the sort of the recommendations of Parks and Wildlife.
Right.
So those species nest in, like for example, the burrowing owls nest in prairie dog holes. And so what we do is we say that the initial disturbance can't happen outside of that window, or it must happen outside of that window. And so, but once you do the initial disturbance, then you have a pit there. So they're not going to nest in the pit. That's right. So once that disturbance has occurred, you've eliminated the risk that you're going to disturb one of those nesting sites.
So that's just at the beginning.
It's just at the beginning, yes. We do write into the leases also that if they do decide that they absolutely need to do it during that window, they can have someone come out and survey for those species. And if the survey concludes that they are in fact not there, then they can go ahead and do the disturbance. But that's more of an exception. But we do give them that option if they feel that it's absolutely necessary.
And Ben, how long is the lease and how long do they expect that gravel pit to play out?
Yeah, great question. This lease has a term of, and actually this is the standard terms for all solid minerals leases, is they have a 10-year term. And then it has what's called a held by production clause for an additional 10 years. So if they're producing in the last 3 years over what we call paying quantities, which is defined in the lease, then they're paying royalties. Then it auto renews for another 10. Once we get to that point, then the board has options.
And is 68 cents competitive and does it get adjusted for CPI or anything?
Yeah, so the great question. 68. So on these, the Colorado Department of Local Affairs produces an annual assessor's report
Good.
that's really aimed at that's really aimed at property evaluators, but they do a survey that includes the sand and gravel rates for all these different regions of the state. And I rely on that really heavily because it tends to be pretty accurate and it comes out annually. So this 68 cents comes from that report for this region of the state. And we do vary from that on occasion, depending on what we're, if there's some unique character of the site. But in this case, that is the published rate. Our leases also for sand, gravel, and construction materials that are leased in a dollars per ton amount. We adjust those every 5 years based on, in this case, it is based on the assessor's report.
I think Commissioner Pribble had a question.
Yeah, really quickly, it noted that the county has to get a permit from I guess it's the Division of Reclamation, Mining and Safety. Is that a pretty pro forma exercise? And what happens if for any reason they can't get a permit?
Yeah, so like all operators, the county needs to not only go through their own county process, but also get permits from the Division of Reclamation, Mining and Safety. And they go through the that same process. I don't think I would describe it as pro forma. It is the same process that private operators go through and every other operator goes through. So.
Great, thank you. Any other commissioners? Any other questions from the commissioners? Great. All right, then may we have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move the board approval of solid minerals production lease 117895 as contained in our board packet. And that we delegate authority to the director to take appropriate action consistent with our decision.
Thank you, Commissioner Heath. May I have a second?
Second. I just want to make sure we're in our published pattern.
Oh,
We've been taking public comment ahead of the motion in our latest sequence, right?
Thank you. All right, practice round 2. So are there any public comments about this final action item?
Folks listening along, use that raise hand feature if you'd like to say something to the board on this item. And no hands are raised.
Thank you. All right, then may I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve solid minerals production lease 117895 as contained in our board packet, and we delegate authority to the director to take appropriate action consistent with our decision.
Thank you, Commissioner Heath. May I have a second? Commissioner Harvey?
Yeah.
I don't know who time. Now let's have a vote. Commissioner Pribble?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon? Aye. And the chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks.
Luann?
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Andy Bissett for the Transactions and Record Services team. Here to present the December board leasing agenda. This month's agenda includes 9 items, 3 of which are competitive bids, made up of 2 ag and 1 recreation. We have 4 new leases, 1 recreation, as well as 3 right-of-ways. And additionally, there are 2 extensions, 1 geologic carbon sequestration and 1 solar planning. Staff is happy to answer any questions you might have and does recommend approval of the December board leasing agenda.
Do have a question, Andy, sort of looking at item 6, which is a right of way for 30 years for electric transmission line. The question I have is, given that it's Lowry, and all the complexities we enjoy out there, I noticed that Stewardship Trust had reviewed this in the right-of-way manager, and I just wondered on the commercial side, is it, because I don't know where this is and I can't tell whether or not, it would ever interrupt future development or.
So the 13.2 kV transmission line is an existing use elsewhere on Lowry. And this is not following a existing right of way. But it's like the other ones supporting the oil and gas pad operations.
Right. So it's, in your view, it's not in an area that's likely to be the development area as part of the Lowry plan. It's just out by the mineral development.
I'm gonna throw a lifeline to David Rodenberg to
Okay.
answer that question.
David Rodenberg, right-of-way manager. It went through our entire line of business review, which included the real estate section to review that type of stuff. So,
Okay.
short answer is, I
Yeah.
think,
That's the clarification I was looking for, because I
Yeah,
don't know the
thanks.
map and it's 30 years and it's Lowry, so.
yeah, yeah.
Take a look at it.
I think it's been about a year and a half where we changed the right-of-way policy to include a full line of business review on all rights of ways, which this went through. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none. Nick, do we have any public comment on this agenda item?
I would wager we don't, because we don't even have any public attendance. Unless there's somebody in the room that wanted to comment on this item. Seeing any.
Right. How about a motion?
I move we approve the board leasing agenda as presented at our December 25 commissioner meeting.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Harvey. All right, Commissioner Pribble, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes, so motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, regarding the minutes, commissioners, are there any questions, comments, or revisions? Hearing none, then the minutes are considered approved via acclamation. And now move on to information. Director?
Thank you, Chair. So for the staff report, I just wanted to highlight a few things. One is the staff leasing report for December 2025. Shows 66 lease actions were approved by staff authority, generating a total lease value of $3,779,000 and change. Number one, as usual, is ag. Number two, commercial real estate. Kudos to Julie Majors for really working to increase the occupancy of our buildings. And number three was oil and gas. Good work, oil and gas team. The second item I wanted to highlight was the first aid and CPR training that a lot of us participated in. It was organized by Ben Teschner. So thank you, Ben, for leading the way. Really provides us with skills we hope we never have to use. In terms of staffing, wanted to mention that we are in the process of recruiting a renewable energy program manager. Really looking forward to filling that critical role. And then in real estate, I'm going to give another plug to Julie Majors. You can see on page 31 of your packets, the occupancy rates are really climbing, and it's just really, I know, a lot of hard work, and thank you, Julie.
Thank you, that's impressive.
It is impressive. It can always just be a moment in time, but we still have every year to get through, so it will ebb and flow.
We got it done by the end of this one, so thanks.
I love your expectation management there. I next wanted to mention the Rural Colorado Career Expo. Thanks for Rachel Turner and Alyssa Kark for attending that. Quite a reach. So that was held In Sterling in November, 700 high school students, local college students and community members. I think likely leaving with a lot more information about what the State Land Board does. So thanks, Rachel. And then when also put on your radar screens what the TRS team put down there in terms of board policies. Impressively, the board reviewed 6 policies this year, but you have your work cut out for you next year with 11 policies coming due. So a special thanks to Andy Bissett for making sure that we stay on top of timely review of policies. And for the final item, it's not in the staff report, but I would like Emily to highlight.
Might ask Abe to help me too. Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Emily Barbo, your Public Information Officer. We had a great visit yesterday from one of our partners. If you remember, during the board tour season, we stopped at the Chico Basin Ranch bird banding station, that new building. And that building has won a Design Award of Excellence from AIA Colorado. And it is the highest award that this organization gives. And we're quite proud of that work. And it was great to see Rick. And we're hoping that we get to see more of him.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Amy Dina, Recreation Program Manager, you know, the building was submitted for a number of awards. This obviously is a big one here locally within the state. As Emily mentioned, it's the highest architecture award that's given by the local chapter. And then they've also submitted for some other ones as well at the national level. So we'll see if anything comes back from those submittals also. But
And the international.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
We mentioned that.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah. And just to put it on your radar, there's a television show that highlights architecture across the world, and they have a specific segment of the show that highlights architecture here in the United States. And they are asking about potentially doing a segment on that building sometime next spring. Hopefully when the banding station is happening as well, so they can get a little bit of action showing what the building is used for. So we're excited about that.
Great work. That's awesome.
So I would add on the bird banding station, I presented to the State Board of Education yesterday, and a highlight was an ardent request by one of the board members to be invited to the bird banding station.
I do have a question on the staff report, and maybe we don't want to allocate too much time now, but I was really disappointed to see that we were denied for tax credits on 9th and Grant, and I don't understand. I'm sure you guys are struggling with it too, but is there anything more illuminating from that? I'm sure you'll keep us posted, but is there anything more illuminating than what's in the staff report?
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Elliot Hoyt, Assistant Director of Sustainability and Working Lands. We were disappointed too. That's the second pass. That said, as you probably know, some projects take, 3 or 4 passes to get these tax credits. They're a very competitive process, and even more so now. There are so many projects right now because we desperately need affordable housing. And there are a lot of developers that have gone into that segment. And so there's a lot of competition right now. So Julie Majors, bringing you up again is looking into that, is coordinating on understanding that. We have a meeting set up with Chaffa to talk about what's happening out there in the competitive market for these tax credits, and to see how our projects are perceived. We think there's an advantage to our situation with the ground lease and the whole situation. We want to make sure that that's being communicated, and that we're getting attention for what we think is an advantage in these situations, but just also understand what the other factors are. So thank you for pointing that out. It's very much on our radar, and we're not only talking to Chaffa, but also finding other partners and folks to talk to figure out if there are other strategies that we should be applying, particularly to that project, to see if there other ways that we could get, financing to bring these projects forward.
Good. So bottom line right now is that your sense is it's really a competition, competitive pressures that are diminishing our chances to.
Yep. And so we're
find
very
out-
competitive. How do we
Get more
climb to the top of that competitive market?
Great. Well, we'll look forward to hearing more. Thank you for.
I just say one
Yes.
thing, just to add on, I think what we're gonna try to do as best as possible is preserve the integrity of the process. So our selection, our RFP selection, who we selected, we're gonna try as best we can to, keep the deal intact.
Yeah.
And keep the integrity of the development process.
I think is it Gorman or?
Gorman.
Yeah, it's a well-regarded, longer term, not
Absolutely.
a Johnny come
Yeah, it's a really solid project. So it's indicative of how many projects are out there that are needing of financing.
Right. Good. Well, thank you for that update. Any questions? Right then. With a drum roll, then the moment we've all been waiting for. Agricultural leasing program. Yay.
You walk up.
Need some like a baseball player has their intro music. That'd be super cool.
Really.
Thank you, Nick. Good morning, commissioners. For the record, my name is Rachel Turner. I'm the field operations team lead, and I'm very excited to be here with you today to talk about our agriculture leasing and some program updates. By way of a brief introduction, my background is in rangeland and ranch management, and I began my tenure with the Land Board in 2019 as a resource specialist. In early 2021, I started working as a district manager, and then earlier this year, I moved into my role, my current role as a field operations team lead. So I've had the privilege of balancing my time in the field, working with our lessees on the ground, and then also working with staff and line of business and understanding the internal operations of the agency as well. So I am very excited to share my perspective of the program today, but I did want to mention that this work is built on generations of state land board staff. We're where we are today because we've been able to work off of the folks that have come before us. And I have had excellent mentors and I work with an incredible team. So this is a huge group effort and is by no means a comprehensive overview of our entire agriculture leasing program, but I've done my best to try and hit the highlights. So let's dive into it. So I've structured this presentation.
Try clicking on the screen and then do the arrow. And then try the arrow after that. There you go.
Okay, thank you. So I've structured this presentation to be about 45 minutes. It is not wanting to like me right now. I'm gonna stop clicking buttons. We'll work through it slowly. So in the first part, we'll talk about our current program and the ways that we're managing everything now. And then in the second part, I want to highlight what we're working on currently as far as updates and inclusions into our process. And then lastly, we'll take a look at the roadmap and where we're working on heading in the future, and we'll open it up for input and discussion. So again, I've tried to jam a lot of information into this presentation, but I've also tried to structure it in a way that answers some of the questions as we kind of move into it. So while I am happy to answer any clarifying questions along the way, please let me know if I need to stop at any point. But I do believe that at some point I may answer some of the questions that have been raised in the past, or maybe something that you're already thinking about in the future. However, at the end, I will have these three questions up here posed for you and kind of open the discussion up based off of these. And so what I'd like to hear back is, what pieces of the process do you find most valuable that we're currently doing? Where can I provide clarification? And then what are some of the additional themes that you were hoping to hear or would like to hear in the future?
Just tell me.
Oh, there's a long delay.
Just say slide and I'll give you your next slide.
Okay, Perfect. Thank you, Nick. So jumping into the overview of the current program, I'm going to start with a snapshot of where we're at today. Then I'll kind of talk about our leasing mechanisms, which is a synopsis of the cover sheet that you would have read. And then I really want to take some time to highlight the stewardship that's in our current process, and then how we receive feedback and incorporate it into the work we do. Thank you. Well, the board has heard these points before. I do think it's important to kind of set the stage for the discussion. And so 96% of all state trust land is used or leased for some form of agriculture use, whether that be irrigated cropland, dry cropland, grazing, or some combination of all three. With just over 1,900 leases in the last fiscal year, $16.2 million were raised by the lease income. And so that's kind of our revenue generation. And then the guiding documents that really lead the program are our grazing and cropland guidelines that the board has reviewed and approved. And then the statute listed on the screen there, 36-1-118. The oversight of this program is through district staff who enforce those lease terms and also assist lessees on the ground. So the map here illustrates our district offices that are throughout the state. We have 6 district offices. Each has a district manager and a district assistant. And then we have 3 resource specialists that are kind of spread throughout the state and kind of assist where need be. We also have a regenerative agriculture program manager who helps support all of our agriculture leases. These are 16 people who make up the field operations team. And I'm very, very honored that I get to work with them and get to kind of work through all of the things that we do throughout the state. But I also hold that unique appreciation for the different roles within it. And many of them are here today. They're going to hate me, but members of the Field Ops team. And so they really, like I said, are the backbone to this program. And they're the ones that are having that direct boots on the ground with our lessee. So next we'll talk about our leasing mechanisms. I've got a lot of slides, I'm sorry.
Watching you for a page.
Yep. So this portion of the presentation here, I wanted to, like I said, give a synopsis of kind of what was in your cover sheet. And I did break the rules with the cover sheet, and you had a lot of exhibits. But by no means, like I said, is it comprehensive. And so it, again, towards the end, if there are any things that I've missed to kind of highlight, please jot them down, and I'm happy to talk about them. But we do utilize several specific mechanisms to lease agriculture on state trust land. We have our standard renewals, which involve specific statutory rights that we call 118 rights. These standard leases, upon expiration or in preparation for the expiration, are advertised publicly per statute requirements. And that is so we can solicit competitive bids from other potential operators. In the event that there are no other competitive bids and the lessee and the state land board agree to the terms of the lease, there's just a standard renewal that occurs and another lease term is recommended. So our leasing framework is heavily defined by, like I said, that statute 36-1-118. This statute is very complex and it guides much of our activity regarding renewals and our process in general. It defines the specific rights held by compliant lessees, specifically the preferential right to match bids. Given its complexity, we may schedule a special session on 118 rights in the future with the Attorney General's office, not to kind of throw some of you guys, I know some of you are back there. Like I said, if the board's interested in kind of diving deeper, I think that might be a very useful tool because it is a complex process, but it's also very important to the work we do. The point I wanted to make on this slide is that the standard renewal occurs in the case that the lessee is in compliance and they hold their 118 rights. A lessee can lose portions of their 118 rights, specifically those matching rights, if they've defaulted within their lease. Default of the lease could include things like overgrazing, failure to treat noxious weeds that are reducing land productivity, or late payments on the lease. In the event of a default, staff notify the lessee formally, and then they provide opportunity to cure said violation in a situation that it is curable. Before an official default of the lease is documented, that notification process occurs. This notification and opportunity to cure is what staff call a corrective action, which usually occurs after a site inspection is completed. I'll discuss those site inspections in just a little bit. For context, staff inspected roughly 25% of our agriculture leasing portfolio last year and issued corrective action on 10% of those. So roughly 40 corrective actions last year. This indicates that the rate at which a corrective action is necessary is relatively small for the entire portfolio. So continuing down the list, we have our competitive bids. These occur when a competing bid from another operator is received on an expiring lease and the current lessee chooses not to exercise their 118 rights. So if they receive a competing bid that they just don't feel comfortable with matching, they can opt to enter into the evaluation period. If they have lost their 118 rights, they automatically go into that evaluation within the competitive bid situation. I do want to draw your attention to one more section of section 36-1-118. This portion here explicitly states that in determining renewals, the board must consider 3 distinct factors: the preservation of the stability of the local community, the revenue provided for trust and its trust purposes, and then the lessee's stewardship of the land. This statute provides guidance on what staff should evaluate, but the framework we use to do that has been shaped within the agency and has been applied differently throughout our history. Later, I'll show the current evaluation form that we use, which are exhibits 9 and 10 in the packet. But this is the current tool that staff use to implement this work. And again, it's been updated throughout the years. Another important leasing mechanism that we have is our sealed bids, and I really wanted to highlight this mechanism specifically. You can almost think of these sealed bids as a mini request for proposal or a mini RFP. They do allow us to introduce competition and specific stewardship requirements, and we use this as a valuable tool for meeting property goals. And it's also a way that I've seen many new operators access smaller trust properties. And so it really is a useful tool within our mechanisms to lease. And again, those are for vacant properties specifically, where there is no renewal of a lease. When we have a conversation with the lessee towards the end of their lease, and then if they decide that they don't want to renew, then we wait for that lease to expire, and we would go through that sealed bid process. So there are situations like that as well. The next one is our request for proposals, and this is a complex process which we utilize for large ranch assets, and it does require a waiver of those statutory 118 rights or portions of those rights. I'll discuss that in detail later in the next session. And then another one we have is our assignments, and this allows for the transfer of an active lease to new operators upon review of the field operations staff. And so we do have a review process for any incoming lessee through that assignment process. So next, like I said, I really wanted to talk about the stewardship within our daily work. As an agency, we define stewardship as an ethic that embodies the responsible planning and management of our resources. Stewardship for State Land Board staff is not just a high-level concept. It's something that we incorporate into our work every single day. And we do that in every interaction, from policy to field work, and it is codified within our operating procedures. While there are many ways that we incorporate stewardship values into our agriculture work every day, I will highlight a few of the more formal ways here. We incorporate stewardship through several specific touch points. Like I said, there are many, but these are the ones that I wanted to highlight, being inspections, projects and cost shares, the regenerative agriculture program, and then our competitive application reviews. And so we'll dive right into the inspections. So district staff spend a lot of time on the ground. Oh, sorry, Lisa. Thank you. They are gathering information and they're understanding the needs of the properties. As mentioned, the field operations team is a dedicated group of staff, with 10 of those 16 specifically responsible for direct field work. So 2.8 million acres divided by 10 is a really big amount of work. And we really do our best to try and manage it appropriately on the ground. All of the inspections listed here on the slide allow our staff to gain further expertise and experience, while also building context to help make informed decisions on the property. There are, however, primary responsibility areas where our staff have the lease compliance in mind, and that kind of comes to our midterm and renewal inspections. Our midterm inspections are primarily completed by those resource specialists at year 5, or the midterm of the lease, depending on the term of the lease or the length term, but typically at that year 5. And then our district managers are the ones that are completing renewals a year prior to expiration. And again, that's another way that we kind of can talk to our lessees about future management and build in certain stipulations that we want in the future and kind of help have that firsthand touch on ways that we as an agency want to see things happen on the properties. So this slide here displays our inspection report format. It captures critical data on range conditions, infrastructure, water, access, which is not always easy. And so this is the inspection report that all field staff, utilize during the inspections. But it also allows them to gather information in an organized way, and then we store it in individual lease records, both a hard lease file and then online in our data management system, Atlas or NetSuite. Well, I won't go through every line here. This tool facilitates the real-time monitoring of land health and helps document lease details within the lease record. How field staff collect that data and get it to this is really up to them and their personal work style. We do have a field survey survey 123 where we have this form available on our phones and we can use it offline and we can kind of keep notes there. I take a lot of notes and then I'll come back and type up the inspections. Some folks can hotspot depending on where they're at. And so this form is really gathering all of that information and then making it in an accessible format for all state land board staff within our data systems. The next piece that I wanted to talk about is our projects and cost shares. Well, we have our own internal funding, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. A significant portion of our stewardship footprint comes from leveraging external partnerships that we have. We actively engage in projects with the Colorado State Forest Service, Farm Service Agency, EQIP projects, local conservation districts, neighbors, those types of things, Ducks Unlimited, CPW, it's endless. We really are looking to form those partnerships and help the landscape wherever we can. These partnerships allow us to scale our impact far beyond just the state trust lands. When you think about those single sections that are kind of checkerboarded, it really is imperative that we have kind of more of those across the fence conversations with our partners and neighbors and all of the parties that may be involved. So this slide here lists those funds that we have internally within the State Land Board to assist our lessees directly on state trust leases. So first, we have the Noxious Weed Fund. This is a $150,000 base budget line item. This fund is managed by the Northeast District Office, who's here in the room today. The second budget that we have is our Land and Water Cost Share Fund, which is managed by the Southwest District Office, who's also in the room today. This fund is governed by, again, that statute, but they're specifically 36-1-148. It's generated entirely from fees that are collected from applications, and it supports improvements through a cost share model where lessees contribute at least 20% of the cost share and the board will contribute up to 80%. However, our operations are limited by that statutory cap and the total annual expenditures cannot exceed that $75,000. To the best of my knowledge and some research that I've done, this $75,000 has remained unchanged since about 1992, despite inflation. So it does make some of those things a little bit difficult, depending on how many projects we're working on.
So for clarification, Rachel, what you're saying is these absolute numbers shown on the screen are limited by statute.
So the Land and Water Cost Share Fund is, and the others, Nick is more responsible for some of those requests within our.
The others are not, they're not limited, they're defined by staff essentially.
Okay, so they're defined as part of the annual budgeting process.
Yeah.
But this one is a fixed number defined by statute that would have to have.
Correct. So I'll be happy to give you a little more color on it at the end.
Yeah.
And then finally, we've got our field operations budget, and this really is like a catch-all where we can support projects throughout the state. This field operations budget can be a cost share, but is not always. A lot of times it's district staff applying for funds to help get projects done. and it's managed by our North Central Assistant District Manager. And those projects are vary depending on the needs of the state, but some things that usually come through there are like appraisals on improvements, or if we need to have certain fees paid to make permits happen or whatever it might be. Those are kind of where it covers signs. We also do like our maintenance on our four-wheelers through that budget line. So it really is more of a catch-all to try and support the agriculture leasing program. And I'll talk about these in just a little bit more too in that second piece. But for now, oh, sorry, shouldn't have touched. Now I'll talk about our regenerative agriculture program, and this is something that I think we're all really excited about. So our objective with this program is to promote healthier soil and ecosystems. This supports healthier livestock, higher revenues for the lessees, and then our longevity of working lands. In February, we hired a regenerative ag manager, Jesse Price, to drive this transition towards sustainable grazing. I wanted to highlight again, this is a voluntary program for our lessees, and since February, he's already worked with producers in all 6 of our districts. This program is a key part of our stewardship strategy. It operates a completely voluntary basis. Lessees are not required to engage with Jesse, but it is a voluntary basis on their hopes to improve their management or to just learn more. The program is to support those lessees through several efforts. One being the lessee consultations. And again, he meets with folks on the ground and has done that in all 6 districts this year alone since that February deadline. And he provides one-on-one support to help them with not only their state trust land, but also how their private land or other leases or allotments might interact with their whole operation. And so it's a really unique program in that it takes a big snapshot of the producer's operation as a whole and not just the impacts to state trust land. Well, those are the goals overall, and it does improve state trust land management in our minds, and we're hoping to see more of that. It is a really unique way that producers can engage on their operations as a whole. Another way that we can support through our regenerative ag program is our lessee education forums. Specifically, this year we'll have 2 that are focused on grazing and then 1 on regenerative farming, which is new for us. We've not done a forum specifically on regenerative farming yet, and so we're really excited about that. We also host an annual workshop where we partner with experts like Noble Research Institute. They had a couple-day seminar with us this past summer, and we're engaging with them for another seminar next year. And again, we're very excited about that. These workshops bring advanced training and resources directly to our producers and offers an education piece. This program also plays a critical role in our broader initiatives, including the grassland carbon lease and assisting with the writers and assisting with the technical review of management plans for RFPs or the request for proposals. So the regenerative ag program manager has been a very important piece of that grassland carbon that Mindy has spoken to you about earlier this year, and we'll be engaging with our agriculture lessees on in the future. And also those requests for proposals. Jesse is on all of our RFP evaluation teams as part of his position. On the screen, you'll see the postcard that will be hitting mailboxes soon that will be inviting our lessees to our upcoming winter forums. This one here is just the grazing one, and we'll have one in Craig and then one in Lamar in late January. And Alejandro Carrillo will be coming in and speaking to our group. And I'm a bit of a nerd, and so I'm really excited. But it'll be a really good event. And again, this is a great way that we're able to bring qualified instructors or specialists to come and speak with our lessees directly. There is no cost to our lessees, and we do provide breakfast and lunch. And so we've tried really hard as well to kind of schedule them around some of the general things that our lessees might be attending and within their works. So that's kind of why we target that end of January time, just to try and take some of the producers' work schedules into mind and allow them to have the opportunity to participate. Finally, and again, while this isn't an exhaustive list, I want to highlight the competitive evaluation process. And this is where a stewardship mandate truly meets the market as we heavily incorporate these standards during our bid evaluations. Again, those are like the competitive bid situations or those sealed bid situations that we use these evaluation forms. When we consider a competitive process, we utilize distinct evaluation tools for grazing versus cropland because the management needs of these properties are very different. Our scoring reflects our statutory mandates in both of those evaluation forms, though. So 40% is financial. The revenue generation is the primary requirement within that financial piece. And so you'll see in that form that would have been in your exhibit that we really do have a way to measure the bids one against each other. 40% is stewardship. Stewardship is weighted equally to revenue. And this is a really important part of our mission, I think. Having that balance between the revenue generation and that stewardship. And you can see that in our evaluation forms. A strong management plan is necessary to secure a state lease. If you're an incoming producer, we do require that you provide a written narrative of your plan on how you're going to manage the state lease, but also how that state lease will be incorporated into your current operation. So again, that bigger picture of how this is supporting an agriculture operation. And then we have 20% of that evaluation form that is based on community stability. And we consider the applicant's role and their family in the local community. So again, this scoring breakdown is not arbitrary. It is tied directly back to statute, the one that I had referenced earlier. We are legally required to weigh stewardship and community stability alongside revenue. And like I said, how we do that has been shaped and morphed over the years, but those are our founding tools. So last, within our current program, I'll talk about the feedback that we receive and how we incorporate that into our work. Our operations are driven by continuous feedback. Just as we ask that our lessees practice adaptive management and take other things into consideration, we apply that same concept to our agency's processes. We gather feedback from direct field feedback. Our staff, like I said, live and work in these communities, and many of our lessees are neighbors to our field staff. What our staff see and hear every day does either when conversations happen, come back to me, and then I speak with Elliot, and I'm going to go through the whole process there as well. We have our informal channels where conversations are in the pasture. You're talking with their lessees, you're talking with neighbors, at the county fair, at different events that our staff might be. Those are more informal channels that we kind of gather some of that feedback from our partners and folks that are interested in our program. More formal channels that we have are our stakeholder meetings and roundtables. And so you guys would have seen within that grazing rates process update that we had done, that we had attended CCA meetings twice a year usually. We've attended other conferences and try and engage within different industry opportunities. And then the State Land Board hosts its own agricultural roundtable every year in the summer. And we have all of those industries that we invite into our space, and we have questions for them or request feedback from them on updates to our process. And so there are many ways that we're trying to gather that piece there. And then we also have external direction, and those are things like goals from the governor and legislation and things that we all have to take direction from. Again, I want to really weigh in on this piece here. Our field staff live in these communities. They are neighbors to our lessees. And I'm sure every Colorado resident can have a state trust land that's probably within a day's driving distance at the very least, but also could be right next door. We are spread out throughout the state. But this presence allows us to view our lessees as partners in this day-to-day management, and they really are. We also rely on the informal interactions, like I said, at different events and booths where we go out, and Emily really leads those, but district staff participate and support in those types of engagements as well. But again, that physical presence allows us to try and gather an understanding of the local conditions. All right, so jumping on to section 2, I'll discuss some of the specific updates to our tools and forms that the team's currently working on. And then I also want to provide a deep dive into the RFP process and then outline what we need to kind of continue this success that we have so far. That might be 2 slides. So first I'll talk about the updates in our process. And so on the screen here, you can see we've got a few things that I wanted to highlight. We are listening and learning. We're improving based on new knowledge, new expertise, or new research and new context. I wanted to frame this update around the concept that we've talked about before again. We are a generational agency, so we have a lot of building blocks that we're building on top of, but we're bringing in new information. We have nearly 150 years of that institutional knowledge that serves as that foundation, but we are also fueled by a new generation of staff energy, a new director, new commissioners, and that combination, that foundation of wisdom that we have, plus the new perspectives and the new ideas that come in, is what allows us to respect what works while updating what needs to change and what needs to improve for the current day. So regarding our internal tools, we are in the process of streamlining our cost share forms for both the noxious weed fund and the land and water fund. Our goal here is to provide efficiency. We want our forms that are user-friendly for our lessees, but also allow staff to process requests quickly and effectively so we can get the money on the ground within the projects where it makes a difference. This form is used to help our lessees treat weeds and invasive species. And we've made some updates here to just make it a little bit more user-friendly for both our staff and our lessees to utilize. This is the second page here, and we captured some new signature pieces, but also some more definitions between partial or full funding, depending on the project. This page here is our non-lessee request form for invasive species and cost share. Not everyone knows that we have this available, but this allows us to partner with neighbors or counties on projects that benefit state trust lands, even if the applicant isn't the direct lessee. So again, controlling weeds doesn't stop at the fence line, but we've worked with counties and BLM and other agencies of some of those neighboring partners to do larger projects and have utilized this form to do that. This here is page 2. Again, some more updates to the signature lines and some of the funding request portions. And then we've made updates to our land and water cost share form. Again, honoring our commitment to stewardship and supporting our lessees requires those resources and the assistance with these projects. And again, as we look to the future, we know that $75,000 doesn't go far, but we do a lot with it. And we have been able to help support projects. Livestock wells and ponds have been developed using this fund, reseeding efforts, dump site cleanups, and most recently, we actually just approved a cost share on virtual fencing and have purchased a tower to assist a lessee to help with some of their management. Again, I'm going to make sure it's out right here. These forms need to function in the field and online. So these are tools, like I said, that our staff are using, but also our lessees are using. And so a lot of times our lessees get access to these forms in the field. A lot of us have these printed out in our pickups and we'll hand it to a lessee and it'll come back to the district office covered in coffee and dirt. And that could have been me and it could have been our lessee. But it really is a tool that helps process these projects, but comes from the ground. And so they need to be user-friendly in the field, but also for our staff to utilize and go through that approval process and also document it for future. And so these are, again, tools that we use to help document things within our lease files. And then finally, for the updates on our forms, we have our field operations project. We've standardized some of this and just made it a little bit more in line with some of those other updates that I just mentioned on our other 2 forms. So some of those signature lines and things like that. But this is that fund that allows district managers and district staff to request funds for those smaller operational needs, like those appraisals, improvements, signs, or repairs on certain things that we might be responsible for. Beyond our forms, we are reviewing those internal guidelines that staff really use to help guide their work. And so we have a very, very qualified set of staff. And we also have the tools that they can lean back onto. So if there's a process that they haven't done recently or might not have as much familiarity with, because we do have a lot of forms, we have those guidelines that they can look back to and kind of walk them through how our general process is structured. And so we have internal guidelines for all of our process, but we make updates to those based off of board direction and things that we're hearing. So within your packet, you would have seen our external guidelines for competitive bids with an update that's really similar to this. This is a snippet of our internal guidelines. And so at one of our last requests for reviews, we heard that the board really wanted to provide a way for lessees to tour the property if they're interested in placing a competitive bid and wanting to evaluate the improvements. And so we've facilitated a more formal way of them being able to do that, where they can reach out for a temporary access permit and then schedule a day where a district staff member assists and attends the property a visit with them. And that, like I said, provides the opportunity for competitive bidders to get a better view of the improvements that they might need to be purchasing as part of it or what might be supporting that lease. But it also protects our lessees and their current assets and things. And so it really is trying to balance some of those. But we listen and we apply those changes within our internal guidelines. We're also making specific updates to the competitive bid evaluation forms. And we want to do that to just address some of the new priorities that the board has kind of indicated. One of the things that we are looking at doing is adding extra credit points for lessees or applicants that might be engaging in some of the programs that we're really emphasizing to highlight good stewardship. One being that grassland carbon. So if a lessee is participating in a grassland carbon lease, either on state trust lands through our program, or is interested in doing that on a lease that they're applying for and has experience doing that in their past or on their current operations, we're looking at ways to build in an extra consideration point for those types of things to really highlight the initiative that we want to drive home there. We're also looking at ways that we can incentivize and bring down barriers for new producers, and ways that we're looking at doing that is we absolutely need qualified producers and operators on these leases. Again, they are our partners and they're the ones doing the day-to-day management. And so we need folks that have experience. However, folks that have experience might not have a piece of property that district staff can go and evaluate and view their management. And so one way that we're trying to fix that piece or to try and take that into consideration is providing extra points or somewhere within our system for new producers that have experience through qualified apprenticeships or a mentor that might be able to speak for them and say that, yes, I've got this experience and I vouch for them, and kind of bring in that idea that we are vetting our operators on the property and their experience, but also their capabilities of managing these leases. And then we are also looking at ways that we can incorporate wildlife more into our forms. And so these would be adjustments to our current scoring and really just highlighting. I want to point out that these are things that our staff are already doing. We all take that into account already, but this is a way that we're formally capturing it on that evaluation form. And also reminding staff too, we kind of run through these forms, and a lot of us that have experience with these evaluation forms can kind of walk through this with our lessees or our applicants without having to look at it. But a lot of times we do. And so it's just another way to remind folks to kind of look at that within their evaluation, but ways that we can incorporate how producers are mentioning habitat or how that interacts with their lease, or how they might be assisting with that based on their timing of grazing or their intensity of grazing. And so we're looking at ways to incorporate that wildlife piece there, but also the improvements that lessees are utilizing. Are they utilizing wildlife friendly fence? Have they considered that? Are they interested in that? Do they have experience with that? Or some of the other wildlife friendly improvements like drinkers and guzzlers, or some of the bird ramps and tanks. And a lot of our producers are doing those things, but again, this is a way that we can kind of talk to our applicants even about the things that we're interested in them considering in their management. And then now I wanted to talk about the request for proposal process. We also often shorten that to that RFP language. So we use the full RFP process very strategically. This is reserved for our most complex assets, places like the Chancellor Ranch or Chico Basin Ranch. We use RFPs when the state owns most or all of the improvements. And so that can be housing, as you all know, but the fences and the tanks and things. There are situations where our lessees may own portions of the improvements that they're responsible for on an RFP property, but usually that's with the assumption that they'd remove it at the end of their lease term. These properties also function as a large contiguous landscape. Again, it's really a unique opportunity for producers, especially in the state of Colorado, to not have that checkerboarded piece that they have to take into mind. And our RFP properties are a contiguous landscape that a producer can manage. Another consideration is that there's a high public interest and a need to manage these competing uses that are on the property, like recreation and conservation, alongside their agriculture lease. I often I often think about our RFP properties and the multiple uses that are on them and how complex they can be. And so our producers on these properties are not only taking, and I say this with the caveat that all our producers are taking those into account when they're managing the landscapes, but especially on our RFP properties where you have so many of those overlapping uses where we really do utilize those layered leases. That takes into consideration some of their things, whether that be recreation or it be right of ways or oil and gas, whatever it might be. Our RFP properties typically have a higher engagement from our lessees in working around some of those other line of business considerations. While the RFPs secure the robust stewardship commitments, they are extremely resource intensive for staff to administer, and they often require us to take a more direct management and maintenance in those responsibilities as well. So when I say that our lessees are meeting or speaking with our other lessees more often in our RFP processes, staff are also involved in those conversations. And so there's more engagement from staff on these properties as well. Again, we've utilized this process on properties such as the Chancellor, Chico Basin Ranch, Lowry, Williams Park. These are complex assets that function as that single operating system and often require a partner who can manage all of those pieces together while still meeting the goals that the agency has set within our direction, within that RFP advertisement. So our current strategy for RFPs is that we utilize them for new acquisitions or when specific management outcomes are required. But there are trade-offs, like I was mentioning just a bit ago. Staff time, it is a resource-intensive process. The Chancellor RFP required significant staff hours, more than 500 as a team, but there are also individual work hours that go into that. We also need to consider the revenue that RFPs bring. Interestingly enough, throughout this process, I came to realize that RFPs are showing to generate a little bit lower revenue generation than our general competitive bid process. And that's per AUM rate. I've got some statistics here for later on if you want to dive into that just a bit more. But while they do secure higher competition in the number of applications we receive and in some situations the quality of applications we receive, that bid rate, it does fall just slightly below what our current competitive bid process brings in, just our standard competitive bid process. And then another, like I said, consideration is the management and maintenance that goes into this. These properties often involve significant investment to maintain those board-owned infrastructure. And where on our standard leases, lessees most of the time are the owners of those improvements and are directly responsible for fixing them. On the RFP properties, our district staff are the ones that have that responsibility to make sure that the maintenance, and we work with our lessees very, very closely on that. And our RFP lessees do have requirements for daily maintenance in order to keep board-owned improvements up to date and in a safe working condition. However, when it goes past that maintenance stage and we need to rebuild portions of fence, that's something that the State Land Board staff is working with the contractors directly a lot of the times. And sometimes our lessees are the contractors, but there's a higher engagement with those projects on our RFP properties from our district staff. And that takes up a lot of time. I like to like the Chico Basin Ranch with all of the housing. The South Central District Office has put in so much time directly working with the property lessees, but also the contractors that are making these projects happen. And that's unique to our RFP properties. We wouldn't do that on our standard leases. So looking ahead within the RFP process, we are already preparing for our Sherman Creek RFP. And we're doing it a little bit early. We're going to start drafting documents for public advertisement in January. And so there will be an iterative document that we're working on with all State Land Board staff and capturing some of those line of business considerations. Based on the past lessons, we kind of plan to advertise this with the main guiding document. That's one of the changes that the RFP work group that we kind of created has considered is maybe we advertise these RFPs a little bit differently and we have a guiding document that talks about property details and some of the goals that the agency itself has for these landscapes. And then we have separate applications in separate documents for agriculture, recreation, and then other uses. and that other uses could be a majority of, you know, some of those things that we've already talked about and have heard that there's a call for. It could provide that creativity and that outlet for new ideas that we might not have considered. But by doing that, we really allow our lessees to have a very clear understanding of what we're asking for in each document or each application specific to the use that they're applying for. And while on our RFPs, we have many applicants that will apply for both the agriculture and the recreation lease. As we know, those don't necessarily need to be tied together. And so it's really helpful for staff, but also our lessees to kind of think about that in their application process. Like, I really want to focus on my agriculture application here. I really want to focus on my recreation application here. And then if they have another idea or something like that, staff is also kind of starting to work on some of the thoughts related to the agro and ecotourism call that the board has shared from one of the past recent board meetings. And so staff is starting those discussions internally, and we're having meetings now to talk about some of those things. And then I really think it's being led by Elliot and Abe on those pieces, but planning to do stakeholder groups and bring in the people that really are working with us on these projects and what those might look like. And there's a lot of things being formulated in that piece right now, but maybe those fit under the other lease types. We really don't know at this time, but it's an option that we can kind of pursue. And so that's a new way that we're looking at, like I said, the advertisement piece. On the screen here, you'll see like our typical outline for the RFP document, and those are huge. The Chancellor was a 100-page document itself. And so again, maybe we can look at advertising it in a way that helps our lessees and their staff and what we're looking for in these review process for an RFP. Here I wanted to highlight the Bear Creek property. The Bear Creek program was designed to get new producers on state trust land. I want to share it was a success. It has provided access to a new producer. New producers were able to access this lease. The lessee that we had on the property this year has grazed the property for 2 consecutive years. So he was awarded the 1-year lease last year and then this year as well. But we've learned some critical lessons within the 3 years that we've gone through this process. We've learned that 1-year leases are probably too short. New producers cannot secure bank funding with a 1-year lease. And that really is a barrier that new producers have. And so we want to take that into account. They also can't effectively develop and apply a grazing program in a single season with taking into consideration future aspects. But I also want to point out the way we advertise it is very prescriptive. The State Land Board every year has been setting the grazing timing and the amount of AUMs. And we want to give new operators the opportunity to come to the State Land Board and say, here's what I'd like to do on the property as part of my grazing plan. Here's how I'd like to run it next year. And the State Land Board staff can review that and make sure that it fits the property's goals as well. But that gives new operators the opportunity to really hone their management skills and to take in longer term decisions than a 1 year, or not even a 1 year, but a season of grazing might provide. Let's see what else. Our staff are also solely responsible for managing projects on this property, and we usually partner with our lessees on that. And so some of the staff here are the ones that are winterizing the properties on that. Or they're making sure that the pipeline's repaired and in place before we advertise it, and they're making sure that weed treatment's occurring. And like I said, we do that with our lessees, and we engage with them directly, and we help with those projects in our standard leases. But on properties like this or our RFP properties, there is a higher engagement and requirement for our staff to be involved in those projects. So as a result of that, we're looking at adjusting our approach for future pilots to offer a 3 to 5 year lease term. So this upcoming next year, we're still going to enroll with the 1 year. And then in the future, because that will kind of align it too with some of the recreation on the property, the recreation lease is a 5-year term on Bear Creek. And so that will put us back in line with the recreation. So not next year, but the following year, we'll be advertising for an update to the recreation lease, but also to a longer term agriculture lease on the Bear Creek property. However, that's still with the idea that we're meeting our initial goals there. We're still providing opportunity to new producers. We're still offering a shorter term lease. And we're still managing the property with a lot of that State Land Board input. So that brings me to section 3 of the presentation section 3 of the kind of what we're working on now. And that's what we need to keep this work continuing. So to continue this work, we need that support in 3 key areas. First, staff, specifically resource specialists. I'd really like to see a resource specialist in each district within my time at the State Land Board. As our stewardship work continues to grow in complexity, we need more boots on the ground to manage it. And within a district, it can take you 6 hours to get to a single lease for our district staff. But when you're a resource specialist, it could take you a lot longer and overnights. And we want to be able to balance that staff time a little bit more efficiently, but also have more, like I said, boots on the ground. And so resource specialists in each district office would be incredible for this team. Second, we need some funding support. The board has shown the support many times already, and they've done that through approving staff emergency funds. They've also done that through investments in the Chico Basin Ranch and Williams Park and numerous other investment and develop reports. These are important, and staff thanks you for taking these into consideration and approving these where necessary. I promise that our staff would not ask unless we felt a real need for it. All of us have that revenue side on our minds at all time. We also are thinking about the return on that investment. And so we're taking those things into consideration when we're asking for those funds. Next year, a lot of the staff members here today will be coming to you with several I&D projects for the large ranches that we have within the portfolio. We need updates on some of those improvements or some of those buildings. We want to be more proactive in some of the maintenance that we're doing on our houses. So you're not seeing those large new house bills when we're going through a turnover and lease. And so we'll be coming and asking for some more of those funds. I'm working with the team now to kind of set that up and talking with Nick about what those might look like, but we're hoping to bring some of those to you next year. And then that also ties into our strategic planning. So we're setting the goals now for what our future looks like. And so one of the requests I have for the board is that they take some of these things into consideration when they're providing input into the strategic planning, because the goals that are set in strategic planning really, truly guide this agency. And so if we can tie our work back to those strategic goals, it's much more successful. And so again, a lot of those funding requests that we'll be asking in the future will be directly tied to our current goals, but also assume that they'll continue into our future goals. And then third, we just need some of that continued advocacy. We need your continued advocacy for agriculture in your daily conversations or in your thoughts, whether it's regarding legislation, community values, funding. The respect the board shows to the agriculture operations within the state of Colorado is so vital and important. And so really appreciate all of the board's input and all of the ways that they've helped us be successful so far. And so the last part, and then I know we're headed to a really fun day, but the last part of the presentation I wanted to talk about is a roadmap of where we're thinking that this is kind of going to be heading for the next few months and the work that I'm going to be doing with the team directly. And so we're applying this management updates to some of our core documents. We're thoroughly reviewing and updating the lease template itself, writers, and this is all work that we're doing in conjunction with the Attorney General's office. They are our gurus and our wisdom that helps protect us in those agreements. And so they'll be working and engaging with those with us in the future. We are thoroughly reviewing our writers, like I said, our applications for how a lessee or an applicant might apply for a lease. We're looking at updating our application form, our evaluation forms, so those competitive bid evaluations for both cropland and grazing. And I pointed out some of the ways that we're already thinking about the updates we'd like to include there. Our inspection form and some of the mandatory things that we're requiring that our staff capture during an inspection, or some of the additional information that might be helpful for current and future land board Landbordians. One of my favorite things to do, and this is a little bit of a side note, but I love looking at inspection reports from like early 1900s. We have those in our files, and it is so cool to go back and look at what a district manager or their version of that back then were thinking when they were on the properties. And it is really a historical document that we have access to, but also we're feeding into. And so, like I said, that's a really neat piece of our process to me. We're also looking at updating our subleasing. One of the things that our team has talked about is how can we streamline the subleasing process a little bit easier, but also how can we open doors to one of our current lessees providing custom grazing, which is a big business line for some producers. And how can we do that within our leasing structure? And how can we do that safely with liability included for everybody? And so we're looking at that process. We're also looking at our assignments process and updates that we might be able to make there. And staff have a lot of ideas on how we might already improve that, but we're going to be diving into that. We're also looking at our application and construct improvements and trying to get a better understanding of current ownership valuations, depreciation. Those documents are really important to our competitive bid process, but also to that lease history process, our piece. And so we're going to look at, are we capturing all we want there? Is it easy for our lessees to understand and use? And how can we improve it? And then we're also, like I said, constantly working on those internal guidelines. And so with each little tweak of one of these other pieces, our internal guidelines are being updated because they really do tie into each other. So this is the implementation timeline for these updates. We are taking a phased approach to ensure we get this right. The documents listed on the previous slide will be updated through the following timeline. So phase one, or what I'm calling phase one, was the Field Ops team did a complete run through of our documents and really highlighted some of the key areas we've noticed that we want to see changes. And we did that in an in-person meeting in early October. And I made all these folks sit at a table in front of documents for half a day, and we got through it. And then they went back and have had the opportunity to review at their desks as well and provide input. We also do that through our monthly Field Ops team meetings where we share updates with each other, but also some of the things that I've been thinking about and want to share with the group, or Elliot's been thinking about, or the agency as a whole. And so we're using that as another tool that I didn't mention earlier, but we're going to share updates throughout the process there as well. The orange circle around 2 is where we're at now. Looking for feedback from the board on what you think of what we're gearing up to do and how we're currently doing it and those types of things. Before I dive a little bit deeper, I want to highlight too, you'll see the arrow at the top. The board, we'd like them to be involved throughout the entire process. And I'm going to do my best to engage the board through our staff report and provide updates on how far the teams come in each month in that document. And then provide opportunity there. But if there is a decision that staff needs to talk to the board about for a policy change, say like that subleasing process, which we know we kind of want to update, that would require a change in our grazing policy. And the board reviewed that and approved the new version last year. But if our process changed through this, I might need to take the grazing policy back to you all next year. And so the board's going to need to be involved in those really high level important decisions. And so we'll be engaging with you all then. I also wanted to include line of business working groups, and in early January, I'm going to start doing weekly meetings for work groups. So based off of all of those forums, I'm going to really dive into each of those during a work group and invite the line of business managers or staff that would like to be involved in those and help not only understands the ag process more, but say, hey, this is a piece that really conflicts with the work we're doing over here, or here's a way that might help streamline between our lines of business. And so I want to get that input from them. And during that time, I'm going to ask the Field Ops team members to join me in those meetings so they can help with the conversation and they can give their perspectives as well. And then after we kind of have that line of business review and input, I'm going to go back and we're going to have internal just Field Ops group and really work through one by one, each of us together, what we really like and what we want to keep, or kind of hash out, I could see this be a complication here, or I disagree here. And that's an iterative process. Like I said, that's taken some time, but I think it's very important because we're all using these tools and they are very important to our daily work. And so that'll be phase 4. And then in phase 5, we'll have a leadership team review where I'll gather all that information and I'll take it to the executive team and I'll have conversations and share with them the updates that we're recommending and make sure that that aligns with all of our agency goals and the direction that we want to head. And then finally, sometime next year, I'm hoping to come back to you all and say, here's everything we've already done and say, here's our updates. And so I can't predict when that will be, but I'm shooting for sometime next year. And again, I want to make sure that we have a really thoughtful process and that takes time. And I want to make sure everyone feels very heard and again, this is a working process that includes a lot of moving parts and a lot of people. And so it's going to take some time, but I'm really excited to dive into it. And I wouldn't be able to do that without all of the people in this room, but a lot of help, because this is a huge undertaking and it's a huge team project. And so that's kind of where we're headed. I just want to reiterate that we're not going to wait till the end to talk to you. You're going to hear from me a little bit more in some of those things. And I'm happy to provide additional updates or have discussions about any of the other things that the board would like to do or has ideas as they come about. And I want to jump back to that slide that I had proposed in the beginning of the presentation and throw it back at you guys and hear from you and kind of get an understanding of what pieces you thought you really liked. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you for listening to me talk for a little while here. And then we're also looking for additional themes that you were hoping to hear that maybe we haven't captured yet, or maybe you're seeing in your work, in your life, that we should be looking at more. So with that, it's off. Yes.
Well, thanks, Rachel, for all your hard work and efforts. And I think you said you have essentially 10 staff supervising almost 3 million acres in terms of ground truthing and field inspecting. And so I really wonder about remote sensing and how fast it's evolving with machine learning, the combination. I think in Brazil and Africa and parts of this country, there's so many of those little satellites floating around, just thousands and thousands now, and the resolution's incredible. And that combined with AI, essentially, is giving a lot of countries and farmers around the world a really good sense of the biomass of range degradation and all that. And then using it in conjunction with drones. There's been a lot of hybrid efforts, both the satellites and the drones. And I just wonder if we should put some money, some effort, a highly organized team to see if that's applicable to what you're doing. Because I know you guys travel all over the place, you work hard. But 10 people to inspect 3 million acres is almost an impossible task. So I would encourage you and your staff to really look at that hard. It seems to me it's moving really fast. And that in conjunction with ground truthing, you might just have a better idea of what's really happening over time. And then the second part is the climatologists I read, say in 30, 40, 50 years, Colorado, in terms of climate, will essentially be moving about 3 or 4 degrees south. So, it's like Colorado moving into New Mexico in terms of climate. And, how the drying up of the state is quite scary. And so I hope your staff will consider the implications, 30, 40 years down the road, what's going to happen to all our rangeland and how we mitigate it. I hope that doesn't come to pass, but all the climatologists I read say that's where we're headed. So I would consider both those aspects.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I do want to clarify just a little piece. So absolutely, we do have 10 district staff that are responsible for inspections, and they are the ones that are responsible for managing agriculture use and also manage that surface use. When you kind of think about it, they're the first front line. However, State Land Board does have other folks that are in the field doing inspections and provide reports back to us, like Abe and Alec, and then Lindsay and Erica and Mindy. They all provide feedback to the group. And Steve, I work really closely with Steve Freeze.
Yeah.
And Justin, like a lot of state staff have some impact within the field work and that consideration. And we really are a team, and they've provided a lot of like, hey, you guys should go take a look at this. It is a struggle. And I guarantee you every State Land Board employee would love to have more of a touch-in point on certain properties. But it isn't feasible at the scale we're at. And so with some of those other lines of business, Elliot and I have been in discussions with like the ecosystem services, Bindi, and some of the others to talk about what we might be able to bring in for remote sensing.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at a couple of different programs that might be beneficial in that. I love programs and software and models, but I'm also very much the person that it's so important to count the species diversity and then on the ground level and the soil and like seeing it firsthand on the ground is so important.
Yeah.
And so it is that balance. And with all of that new and coming technology, it's like the stream is moving fast. At what point do we jump into the stream? And I think we're getting close. And we are looking at probably some IND funds, I think, is what we're looking at for some of those programs.
Yeah.
But they really can, and I'm excited to jump into them more because I think of them where can we see how many acres were impacted by a fire?
Yeah.
Or where can we see, an outbreak in maybe an annual species because it's suffering from drought more intensively, or there's been some type of property change, and so we can highlight and we can have that first ping and send people out to it. And so I do think that's a really helpful tool that we're looking at and diving into more. So I really appreciate your support of that. I also wanted to mention the drive and the climate change, and staff are definitely taking that into consideration. We have staff members that have had to go through, in the Alamosa area with that dry up. We're working with their producers hand in hand on what that looks like. And it is a challenge.
Yeah.
It's also really like that. I get pulled into the hurt piece of that a little bit because people are losing their businesses and all of that, but we're also losing the benefits that some of those things provide. But one of the things that I didn't highlight in the presentation, but we take into consideration drought, is we have a temporary AUM reduction rider that our lessees can apply for. And so we will waive all or a portion of their lease rent if they agree to defer grazing or request to defer grazing because of that drought conditions. And in your staff report, you see that drought map every year or month, and that's something that I plug in and I'm keeping a close eye on, and all of us feel those impacts. And so it is something that touches home. And I think that as an agency, we're looking at that as a whole too.
Yeah.
But definitely seeing that coming.
And I'm not just referring to episodic droughts, I'm referring to the whole
Oh, absolutely.
movement, towards
Something
entirely
every
different
person.
climate.
And if I add one thing, Elliot Hoyt, Assistant Director, excellent points. Also, you may have noticed that postcard, the rangeland expert who's coming for the 2 sessions this year, Alejandro. He's honed his technique in the Chihuahuan Desert.
Okay.
And he has operations in New Mexico as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's the forums and those different education resources that we provide is an excellent way for us all to be learning about those kinds of shifts. I know we talked a little bit with the Colorado State Forest Service. They're looking at the migration of the different tree species and things because of that. And so I think it's something that we absolutely need to do. And in a sense, we already are, even starting this year. So you're spot on. And thank you for reminding us to stay focused on that.
Great.
Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
First, thank you for an excellent presentation, Rachel. And a transition is always hard. And I think you and your team have done a really nice job making these adjustments. I'm thinking about this on your first question. What pieces of the process do we find most valuable? I think about it in a broader sense about what agriculture represents to the economy of Colorado. And so first, I think as board members, what I find really valuable is the information. For example, you have a new packet just about trends in agriculture. And then secondly, I think a lot about how do we bring new producers in a realistic way. And certainly, as you mentioned, a 1-year lease, I don't know whether we came up with that or what, but that's way too short. And it seems like that's something we should remedy very quickly. But how do we reward people who are willing to be mentors? Because you can't just have a new person start, or even if you have apprentices. All of us know that if you have an intern or an apprentice or any helper, it takes a lot of time out of your work to be sure you supervise a new person. So I would really like to have you and others who are involved with this think about what it is that would be most useful for new people who want to be producers, and whether or not there's a special role for state land in how we work on that. And I know even at one time, we asked to explore whether or not there was any kind of credit that we could participate with an outside agency to give better access to lines of credit. And I think at that time, there was some thought that that was probably not possible, but I feel like that is still the biggest, I think, issue for so many people who want to go into this is lack of resources. You know, what it would take. So I'm thinking about in that bigger picture of how do we, as participants with agriculture, holding so much land, really look at the barriers that people have and see whether there's any way that we could have some role in addressing.
No, absolutely. And I also appreciate those thoughts as well. It is hard to be a mentor, especially when you've got your own business that you're needing to focus your energy on. And I think that we have a lot of lessees that are probably in some role of a mentor or have some form of an apprenticeship that might not just be called that. And so it would be a great way to kind of look at ways that we can incentivize those relationships. And I've added it to the list, and we'll take that into our thoughts for sure. We're also, I wanted to point out, we're having a larger engagement with CDA as well. And so our agency meets with CDA staff every other month right now, but more as needed. And looking at ways that we can help tie some of their programs where they have those incentives and abilities to help fund or providing resources that are already out there to our lessees and saying, hey, here's something you would really take a look at, and then you can come and use it on your state lease. And so that is something that we're doing currently, is trying to gather more like what resources are already out there and pointing to them. Jesse Price and myself and Emily have a goal of working on some type of webpage that we can send producers to and say, here are some programs that might be helpful for you that we provide. And here are some resources that we think might be really helpful for you in general. And tying back to, like, even if it is the EQIP programs or the CDA programs, or when we get calls in the district office, sometimes people don't even know those exist. And we really do start from the ground up. You get calls from folks that have just retired, or you get folks from, people that had a bad family situation or leaving their family's operation. We get the whole gamut, but calling and saying, I don't know where to start. How can I start? And so we want to be able to provide them some of those resources. But yeah, I appreciate the thoughts and have them down.
I just want to say thank you for this comprehensive review, and obviously all of you have put in so much time and effort to bring this forward to us. And it's an organic kind of ongoing document, and I appreciate the evolution of thinking over time. And I've been on the board a while, and I can see that this is a continuation of thought, especially around stewardship and the emphasis on that. And I've seen that change even in my tenure on the board, and it's being reflected in the practices you all are doing on the ground. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And for my part, as they say in the business, +1 to all my fellow commissioners and their comments. Some I can cross it off the list. Thank you. And especially on the thank you for the comprehensive review. It's a great place to start as we go into the strategic plan, because I think the timing of these is really important, and we don't have time today to delve into the more strategic aspects of kind of who we want to be as an owner and how we want to be there, and our land ownership and all kinds of things. So I look forward to the dialogue as we move through the strategic planning process, because today raised even more questions that I had for us to consider on that. And one thing I wonder too, on the young producers specifically, that a lot, at least over the last several years, it occurs to me that cattlemen's and stockmen's and a lot of the ag organizations have been tackling this sort of succession thing. There's old guys with no families, and then there's a lot of guys who are young who have no land, and so there's I'm imagining that as we interact with all these strategic partners out there, that this access to land is something that working with all those partners would be really useful because it's top of mind for everybody. And we can play our part and help convene and support. And especially what Commissioner Harvey brought up, I've seen a lot of change in that as well, and it offers a lot of promise. And again, reflecting into the strategic planning process, the nature of our business, the nature of the documents that we hold, the developments in remote sensing complemented by other ground truthing mechanisms seem to be almost a perfect petri dish for the AI application of, slicing and dicing the portfolio, whether it's financially or biologically, and then overlaying climatological trends, doing scenario analysis. So I will be really interested to see, as we go through this process, what sort of objectives we have for our knowledge, and then what tools we need to manipulate the databases we already have and to augment the processes that we're already doing. So again, down payment on more to come. And I do hope we can have a follow-up session on, we have 3 sort of goals here, it seems. One is we want to make sure we're always moving rates. We've done some things with that in terms of how we're approaching it, understanding the market, et cetera, setting market-based rates. And that leads us to the competitive bid process, RFPs, a lot of ways to look at it, but are we missing anything in how we can move rates at every juncture, even if there's not a competitive bid? The other thing is on the stewardship of that, always balancing the carrots and the sticks. And you've illuminated a couple of good ideas. I hope we can dig into that a little bit more too. And maybe that's part of this sort of 118. How do we work the lessees to get what we want? And that's part of the strategic plan too. So yeah, lots more, really excited to do it. And the process you laid out is terrific. And I was so glad to see it all put together in one way rather than pieces of the leasing agenda, and these random questions about, well, do we look at, so this was really helpful, and I'm going to hang on to my packet so I can follow it. So thank you very much. Any other questions or comments?
I'm wondering about the opportunities to engage CSU, particularly Mesa out on the western side, with their master's students, either in rangeland management or their naturalists, because CSU cranks out so many great, probably School of Mines too in certain aspects. But they crank out so many great naturalists and rangeland managers. I'm wondering about engaging their master students or PhD students in studying our rangelands, if that's been done or if there's an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. So Elliot is kind of leading some of the initiative on some of the ways that we're working with the CSU groups in general. And we were having conversations yesterday about ways that we can incorporate maybe some more input from them within their process, whether that be some of their GIS experts.
Yeah.
Our team could really use some help with some of those GIS tools. And so maybe we can participate in programs like that. We're also looking at research on things like agrivoltaics, and how we can do projects with CSU folks on some of those agrivoltaics and the work within that. And so we are currently working on some of those pieces, and I'm sure that we'll continue to do so and absolutely look for ways to, because especially, getting that impact throughout the state and leading on those like educational research
and
groups.
A lot of their programs are really cutting edge there. So
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, and something that when I came on board, started having conversations with William Olson before and Rachel now about how do we get more engaged. Obviously, we connect with CSU in a number of different ways, and they're a beneficiary of one of our trusts. So we have connections there, but looking for more efficient ways to connect with students, and to your point, masters and PhD students who are looking for something to work on, looking for data sets, looking for places to do research. part of that is connecting to the academic advisors so that they know that we exist and we're interested. There a couple different ways we're trying to do that. One of the things that we had planned and has not come about, but need to buckle down and make it happen is to kind of have a speed dating session where we go up to CSU and we sort of give some presentations, and all the folks who are doing different lines of research are there. And then we just sort of mix it up a little bit and just explore ideas, so that people can see where that connection is, and they can say, oh, I'm working on a soil, testing protocol, and I really need access to land in very different parts of the state. We're perfect for that, right? So I would love to report that we have done more than we have, but is absolutely something I think would be valuable for us to do. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Mesa University hadn't really thought of that yet, so I appreciate that. And so, yeah, I mean, let's spread the net to make sure that we're connecting with all the different people who are studying best practices and looking for more data possible. So any connections you all have, obviously, we're always looking to make those connections.
Well, CSU is really good at baseline inventories, their biological baseline inventories. And Mesa is really coming along. It used to be just a 2-year community college, but it's really making steps. And it's obviously right on the western side. So I'd at least talk to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also wanted to share, so the temporary access permits that the board approves on the staff leasing agenda and reviews. A lot of times we have researchers through different universities or colleges that will contact the district offices and ask if they can do research on state trust land. And we always provide them the opportunity to do that through that temporary access permit form. But as a part of that, we waive all fees and considerations with the request that they provide their information back to us. And so I think that's one of the things Erica is tracking is the district offices and our other teams are approving those types of agreements. And then we're trying to gather that information, but also providing ways for them to do that research. I also wanted to highlight, like we try and engage, like Jackson Donnell, he presented at a community college with range students. On Tuesday, David Rodenberg and I had a meeting with graduate seminar students at the CSU Fort Collins campus to talk about ranch management and gave a really overview of the state land board. I'd love a way to bring them in more and absolutely get them on our side.
Yeah, a lot of smart people out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So Director Roseman here, I wanted to also highlight that through the HB 1332 State Trust Lands Conservation and Recreation Work Group, there's really a deep dive going on about our portfolio. And I don't know if Tim Brass from DNR is still here.
He slipped out.
Yeah, he did a wonderful job of tapping into a group of CU graduate students who produced catalogs on the parcels within our saline and internal improvements trusts, and so those were highlighted in that legislation. So that's another resource, and I think in the course of the work group's endeavors, we'll have a lot more analysis about parcels or sets of parcels. So that's forthcoming.
Thank you. I think that concludes the ag leasing info item. And I wanted to take 5 minutes, maybe we don't take the whole 10, to introduce, I think, and discuss the commissioner items. And did you want to say anything, or do you want me to share what we've been
You can share.
thinking
Yeah,
about
that's
this?
fine. Yeah.
This was really just to provoke, as we get our packets, and or even before that, to provoke ideas, conversations, challenges, need for information, just things that come to mind when we're all alone, and bringing those here if we think that there's a benefit to a conversation, or to just sharing information, like county commissioner conversations that you've had, Josie, or things like that. So that was the idea behind this new item. And to the extent possible, if it looks like it's a robust one rocking around in your head, letting Nicole know ahead of time so we can make a little bit more time than just a standard 10 minutes on this, because it might be of real interest and value to the other commissioners. And in keeping with that, and I'll have you add whatever you're gonna add, I wanted to say that I've been in conversations with the treasurer's office regarding, well, with a number of people, but around the impact investing legislation that is now being implemented. I'm having conversations and happy to share more with the treasurer's office about how we go about implementing it with impact investment advisor on the overall portfolio and the implications for this new program. I'm also working with Gary Communities on the sort of monitoring and reporting back on outcomes. As you might remember, they were unable to commit during the legislative process that we would measure the key problem we're trying to solve, which is teacher retention. And so I'm pleased to say that the Gary Communities is actually working with the Colorado Department of Education, provided it's around, on the actually measuring the impact of this program from our funds and how that affects teacher retention and a few other factors. So that is very good news in my mind. So to the extent anyone wants to learn more or talk more, I am in direct communication to try and help the implementation of this legislation in the most effective way possible, working with the treasurer's office.
That's really important. And, you know, I think once the session starts, it moves very quickly. So I think, you know, we may even need some way to more than just once a month to know how things are moving.
And this piece is about what's already been passed.
Right.
But I suspect there might be things exactly to that point we learned last year that might be coming up. And so to the extent anybody hears about those, it'd be good to know about it.
I'd love to respond to that, Director Rosmarino here. I intend to get you very frequent updates during the legislative session. It starts in early January on anything that we're part of or that affects us. So you can count on those. And I also think that we should plan for there to be information items on the agendas, on the monthly agendas for deeper dives. And I'm thinking of what Kelly Romero Heaney did on HB 1332, you know, that level of deep dive, you know, timed appropriately to give you a lot more insight and, you know, a chance to respond and engage about those. So absolutely, Commissioner Heath, I intend to do that.
And Deb, to your point, the implementation, once legislation is passed. So, I mean, as this is moving forward with the impact investing idea, I mean, keeping us current on that.
Yes, very much so. And even having, you know, outside experts like the impact investing advisor that might be chosen come and explain a little bit more about how they're looking at it and what they're measuring, what they're doing. So yes, I think we want to be very well versed in how this is working. Yeah, definitely.
So Commissioner Frobe, you were saying that on the agendas, you were thinking of, or we're going to put a time to discuss amongst commissioners, just not free for all, but stuff that, I mean, Ed has given us such scary warnings about every talking to a commission and even looking at them. So is that kind of the opportunity of this thing?
Yes,
Okay,
and it's
yeah.
part of the public record, so we're
Okay,
doing
so we can do it.
meetings.
So-
But, you know, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's
No, I think that's really important because I've so many times before meetings have wanted to pick up the phone and, you know, call one of the other commissioners and see what they say, but I'm very careful of it. So I guess on that note, I'm really curious about, you know, if this whole Lahara goes through as we voted. I'm really hoping we look for other great acquisitions, and 2 years isn't a lot of time. So that's on my mind.
Yeah, hopefully, to the extent possible, we could get pipeline updates in the executive session.
Yeah.
You know, as we're going along.
Yeah.
I'll make it a point of talking to our real estate program manager.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I was at a CNAC meeting this week also, and the CPW strategic plan, I think, is almost ready to go up. And it feels like it would be really helpful if we might have, either a presentation from them or an opportunity for us to really look at that and see where we have goals that are appropriate with them and to look at resources that they're considering. They've had new staffing acquisitions over there. I don't know if I thought one of the most interesting things that somebody said at the meeting is that the change in emphasis over there is so great. There's even a lactation station at CPW. I said, that is really a change. But no, the
That's a really good
strategic
point.
plan, I think is so important to the work we're doing and particularly in stewardship. And it would be great to look at, or even have a presentation from them more in depth about what their focus.
So maybe we can do both, get a copy of it, or maybe we just download it on their site. Is it on their site?
Yeah, I mean, we can all look at it individually,
But then have a presentation so that they're highlighting what is out of all of that, what's most important.
and I think the fact that they're a little bit ahead of us just allows us to learn kind of what their thoughts are.
Great idea.
Yeah, I took that down. Great idea, Commissioner Heath, and it reminds me that we need to revisit how we can plug into the water plan. We had that great presentation by Colorado Water Conservation Board.
Right.
And there's a lot of intersection there, so follow up on that as well.
Great.
And I'm hoping with a strategic plan that we build a framework that describes better when our acquisition is strictly fiduciary and when, like with this Bergen parcel, it might be for wildlife. I mean, we can look at any individual parcel and say that that's really a great wildlife corridor, or that might be a great investment financially. But I still think I'm a little vague as to whether we're making those decisions piecemeal or whether it's in a big framework.
Ditto. And I think that is a big piece of the strategic plan is tied with the asset allocation analysis and exercise of the questions of what should the portfolio look like?
Yeah.
And specific on the land side, what are the characteristics and what are the motivations and how are we going to measure it? And lots of fun stuff.
Yes.
I think the only other thing that kind of came across is, and maybe you all have had conversations, speaking of the strategic plan with the sponsors, the Government Performance Solutions, who I thought were a good team. I had a conversation with them, but it poses the question of how we can engage robustly as board members in the strategic planning process. Some in public meetings, maybe there's other one-offs, whatever, it's for you all to decide. But I'm just raising the question that I wish it was easier for us to spend a fair amount of time together.
Yeah.
Talking about some of these issues and how we think about them and how we think the organization, might.
Well, I feel like that's really needed.
Yeah, I do too.
And it feels like, I certainly want to be in compliance with sunshine laws. Transparency is not a bad idea. We're in a public session and I don't see any reason why we can't just schedule time to really talk about what are our thoughts about where we want to go.
Right, make sure there's time on the agenda to do that.
I have thoughts on that.
Yes.
On this, Nick, you want to outline? Okay, we have come up with a plan. The first element of that is a planned workshop in February for the board to really focus on the strategic plan. And then to bring an information item back to you in April. And then to bring a decision item to you in May. So that's, 3 opportunities to talk with other commissioners about what you'd like to see in the strategic plan. And in the interim, we're having a series of robust staff meetings to provide more material and thoughts and themes for your consideration. So that's the plan.
And can we also make sure there's time on the March agenda for, spillover and?
Yes, we can make sure that we have at least it could be part of the staff update, if you like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, however, that makes sense, the information items.
In fact, we could have it in the staff update in January too.
Okay.
We could just make it a regular part.
It's so important
Yeah.
and it's happening fast.
Yep.
I mean, and I think the goal is a release. I don't know. Do we yet have a release date? Because I know we were striving towards a date.
The date we are striving towards is before the end of the fiscal year. So we want to bring you the decision item in May. If you have feedback where you want us to revise it, then we would bring it back to you in June and have it in place by June 30th.
Great. So I think every agenda.
You go.
Anything else? All right.
Well, I think it's an opportunity while we have so many here to just say to the folks who are out there in the field, how important we think your work is, how much we value it, and how much we hope it's a two-way street for hearing continually or continuously about what the situation is on the ground and how that relates to our decisions. So we appreciate your work and hope it continues to be information provided to us as well.
Here, here.
Absolutely. And I think I can speak for myself and probably the other commissioners. I certainly well know by now that even the significant packet of materials that we get every month is only a small reflection of all the things you all have been doing all day, every day, that month and the months before. So know that at least I really get how much work and effort you all do for this organization and how much you care. So thank you. All right, let's consider this adjourned and head to lunch.
All right, great.
And move on.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.